Okay, Happy New Year. Welcome to Tax Chat number 47. I'm Dan. And no means not. We're not believing you. We're not your slaves. We're not listening to you no more. And a lot of us are not voting. And one of the goals of today's Tax Chat is to tell you why you should not vote. So back in December, as we ended the year, I was part of an online summit, first of its kind, End of Slavery Summit, with Corey Enderlot. And his website is NITA.one, that's NITA.one, and it stands for Nature is the Answer. And that's pretty important for my overall story, because a lot of my story has to do with shamanic animal signs and various things in nature, actually, that I'm going to get into a lot more in depth as this year progresses. But today I'm going to talk about a few things that's going to probably trigger voters of the extremes. If you're an extreme right or extreme left, wing, hardcore left, hardcore right, you're probably going to get triggered. If you're one of the moderates, more in the middle, you're probably not going to be as triggered. Either way, some of the stuff I'm going to share today is objectively true, and nothing's going to ever make it not true. Some of the other stuff that I'm going to share today are going to be opinions based on research, and some of the other things are going to be opinions based on common sense observation of what's going on in the world. A little bit of intuition. There needs to be a balance between your intuitive feminine side and your linear thinking problem side. And if you have that balance, the intuition will be there. You're not going to be all woo-woo or all just the facts, ma'am, or any of that kind of stuff. So, with that being said, I just got done training. I'm tired. But I am looking forward to doing this first Tax Chat of the year. I want to, in advance, thank both Mark Passio and Corey Enderlot, because a lot of the slides I'm using on here are their slides that they share from their websites. I got a few that I made myself. I got a couple that I had from other podcasts I've done. I just wanted to throw that out there. It makes just getting up here and talking a lot easier when you've got people sharing the resources, and I'm very thankful for that. Very thankful for it, actually. The first thing that I'm going to talk about today is the title. The title of this first podcast is Nature Wants to Save Us. That's the title of this first podcast, Nature Wants to Save Us. And that is if we do our jobs and take action also. And I'm going to be talking about karma and natural law in this first, and this is going to be a 4-part little presentation. I probably could make it into 4 separate podcasts. I'm going to make it into 1, maybe 2. We'll see. I'm not in a hurry to get it done. And I realized before, why rush through things when you're pre-recording? You could kind of take your time and, edit it and whatever. I'm not doing them live, so it's like, hey, let's take. I don't have to rush through this. I actually never did. So most people don't know what natural law is, but they've heard of karma. And karma, right here it states, is nature's way of payback. Because what you put out into the universe will come back to you in unsuspected ways. Give only what you don't mind coming back to you or getting back to you. So we live in a universe with a law of attraction, a universe of mirroring. So what you put out is what you attract back. That's karma, especially based in actions. People all understand karma. They get the concept. But when they hear the word natural law, which a big part of natural law is cause and effect. For every cause there's an effect. For every effect there's a cause. Karma is the same thing. So when I start talking about natural law, you start hearing a lot more people are starting to talk about natural law now. When you start hearing and understand that it's not the law of the jungle, it has nothing to do with Darwinian, might is right, survival of the fittest, has nothing to do with any of that. Natural law is one of the universal laws that govern this universe, and it's the same thing as karma. It's the law of karma. I got to say this. I can't say this enough. It's not negative. It's not positive. It is completely indifferent. It's benign. It literally reacts and pays attention to your thoughts, intentions, and actions. So natural law is a set of universal, inherent, objective, non-man-made, eternal, and immutable conditions which govern the consequences of behaviors of beings with the capacity for understanding the difference between harmful and non-harmful behaviors. That's by Mark Passio. I've seen several of variations of this definition that he's put out over the years, and I'm not going to speak for him. I believe he may have said he had to add a little caveat onto this because so many people would hear natural law and think that it had something to do with the law of the jungle. And no, karma and natural law is not going to judge a lion for eating an antelope. Okay? But it will judge a human being for shooting an animal for no reason. Because we are higher sentient beings with the capacity to know right from wrong. So inherent meaning it's there. Immutable. It can't be changed. It is a boundary condition. And I kind of shortened it up to make it just simpler for myself. And someone asked me if I was going to put it out there in a simpler way, much smaller version, and this is a lot of his wording also. It's the universal binding and immutable effects that govern the consequences of human behavior and actions. And, again, a universal binding, meaning it can't be changed. Okay? Immutable effects cannot be changed. It's a consequentialism. What you put out is what you get back. And I've seen this at work in my own personal life. And with me personally, but even more importantly, I've seen this with people that I know. Okay? A couple people specifically, I'm not going to say who they are, who actually have done multiple people wrong, including me, simultaneously. And I was very angry. I was very angry at a couple of these individuals. Okay, I'm not going to say no names. And the effects of their actions, it wasn't immediate. It took a couple years. And when I watched karma come back around and smack them in the ass, it really did. I mean, it's a real thing. And I would dare say that in this case, it may have even been divine. As in, divine, planned. The universe just responded, and as a coincidence, because of it, the karma that someone else is dealing with, and they voluntarily have to deal with it, would have been something I would have been doing. And for whatever reason, the universe doesn't want me doing that. It wants me doing this. So I would say sometimes there can be some really odd coincidences. Things that I used to refer to as supernatural that I now call simply natural. So I've seen it at work with other people, and it doesn't feel good at the time. You may want to beat the snot out of somebody, and believe me, I did. But I even then practiced the pause. As a martial arts instructor, what kind of example would that be setting? If what the one person did was complete theft. But at any rate, karma came back and got him. and it got the other one. And I even felt bad. It happens. So this is just, you have to understand what we put out into the collective comes back to us. So what are we putting out into the collective right now that has the whole world suffering in this separation of the last 3 years? Have we been cosmically judged? Have we created, collectively these conditions? I believe humanity's been here before, and I don't think this is human driven, but I'll get to that. But in order to understand morals under natural law, the morals that were already created by the Creator, by source consciousness, God with the capital G, however you want to word it, the Father in the Sea of Lights, it doesn't matter. I don't care what you refer to God as. Just understand that the Creator's already put in place a set of objective morals, that behaviors that are acceptable and not acceptable, that we as higher sentient beings have to abide by. That's why they're boundary conditions. So objective morality, you have to know what a right is. What is a right? It is correct. It's based in truth. It's moral, and it's in alignment with natural law. Okay, a right is a verb. It's an action. It's any action you take that does not bring harm or initiate harm to another sentient being. What is immoral? Well, it's a wrong. It's not based in truth. It's incorrect. It's immoral. It's in direct opposition and not in alignment with natural law. And it's a wrong action that you initiate that initiates harm. It's an action you take that initiates harm to another sentient being. And that is not passing on a germ. Okay? I'm sure I gave plenty of people colds throughout my life. Natural law did not look upon me negatively for that. So it's important to understand what is objective morality and what is a right and what is a wrong. I would go as far as to say right now, if you know something wrong is going on in the world and you're not doing something about it, you're also in the wrong. You're culpable. Natural law is going to come back and bite you in the ass. Maybe not as bad as someone who's taken a negative direct action against somebody, but it still will. That's the law of attraction. That's the law of mirroring in this universe. And something else that I got to say too is once you start to understand this to any degree where you could explain it, I really believe it becomes a moral obligation to explain this occulted knowledge, because it's being used against us big time. And these dark psychologists know what they're doing to turn us peasants against one another. So that was objective morality, which is natural. Well, subjective morality is unnatural. It's not based in nature. It's based in authority. It's morality based on opinion. That could be personal opinion or someone else's opinion or whim. Whatever's preferable or acceptable. Man-made rights, government, man-made laws. Legality is authority. Rulers are the rules. Authority is truth as morality. It's moral relativism. So, subjectively, my personal morals, I have not been able to quite make the mark that I've wanted to make throughout my life because I'm a human being. I've failed miserably. I've had bad habits. I've had addictions. I've had issues. I'm still working on stuff, man. Subjectively, I haven't quite made it all the way to where I want to be. I'm not perfect. I challenge anyone to say they fucking are. However, objectively, I will not sit by and allow the harm of another human being to happen and not do something about it. And I myself have never initiated harm against any other sentient being, at least not in my adult life. Okay, I paid for some stuff when I was younger. I'm sure, as a kid. In my teenage years, though, no, not really, because I was usually beating up bullies. But whatever. Just understand that at one point in time in our history, in our very recent history within the last 300 years, ball and chain slavery from the African slave trade was legal. Was it moral? No, fuck no, it wasn't moral. Slavery's never been moral. It's never been moral, but it's been legal. Part of the human condition has been slavery since Mesopotamia. We have never not had a condition of slavery. So natural morality is based in nature. The emphasis is on the natural powers of conscience and empathy, based on the nature of human beings. It comes from God. It's natural. Unnatural morality, the emphasis is on unnatural powers that have no basis in nature, that have no real authority, such as government and rulers and the laws that they make. And you could tell when these laws are actually under, God's laws. You don't murder, right? That's a law in every state in this country, in every country. Unless it's, the government doing it, then it's okay. But like in this country, a gun could be legal in one state to carry, and in another state it's not. Marijuana is legal to smoke in one state, but then in another state it's not. None of that's immoral. That's all subjective morality. It's on the opinion and whims of human beings. It's unnatural. So, transgressions against natural law. Every harmful action that a human being is capable of taking is a form of theft. Okay, so every transgression against natural law does boil down to a theft. Some form of property is always being stolen when a wrongdoing is committed. Your life is a form of property. Your rights are a form of property. Your freedom is a form of property that you were born with. Unnatural law, transgressions. So the transgressions against natural law or unnatural law, a transgression to unnatural law, the only wrong behavior to unnatural law is to learn, teach, or exercise natural law, or to not learn, teach, or exercise natural law. This is a primary reason why government schools are teaching obedience as virtue. There's a trick that we have as teachers. When you walk into a room, you address everybody. The first thing you want to do is maybe hand out a sign-in sheet, tell everyone, hey, sign this, da-da-da-da. You start giving these basic type of, not commands, but requests. People usually comply with that simple stuff, and it sets the stage for you to be sort of in charge. Well, from kindergarten on up through school, these are mental insane asylums is what they really are. They are total indoctrination camps is really what they are. And that's why, I've seen kids who get D's and F's, but yet because they're not jiving with what's going on at the school. They don't like taking orders. But they've got genius level intellects when tested, when their IQ's tested. There's a reason for that. Unnatural law being the opposite of natural law, or any law that isn't a natural law, always constitutes a form of theft, which some form of property is always being stolen and the victim is created. Life is a form of property, rights is a form of property, freedom is a form of property. So unnatural laws create victims through non-adherence to natural law. I could really see just as an aside here, when doing this type of stuff, because I don't have any guests on, so I'm hoping I can make it a little entertaining later, but a lot of this information isn't meant to be really entertaining. I hope I don't make it too dry or boring, but I really can see the need for two different computers, to be honest. That might be my next, maybe my next purchase. Maybe I'll get another laptop so I can have two different computers. So over here on the right, in like light red or pink, are crimes or trespasses against true law, against natural law. Theft, murder, willful lying, trespass, assault, rape, coercion. Those are the 7 transgressions against natural law. All of them is theft. Theft is the theft of property. Murder is the theft of someone's life. Willful lying is the theft of somebody being able to make an informed decision. Trespassing is theft of someone's right to feel, safe and secure in their where they're at. Assault is theft of somebody's physical well-being. Rape is theft of somebody's right to consent. Coercion is their theft of their right to make a decision for themselves, and there's a lot of coercion going on in the world. Okay, over on the right side are vices. They're not the 7 deadly sins, all of them. They're not all the 7 deadly sins, but they're kind of attuned into the 7 deadly sins. Gluttony is too much food. Drunkenness is too much alcohol. Gambling is it's too much risk taking. Greed, material fixation instead of nature. The best things in life are free. I don't know how people can't be amazed at a beautiful sunset, and that's free. Prostitution, okay, that's paid intercourse. Again, these are vices. They're vices. There's no one's being hurt with any of these things. Idleness, you're being lazy. I could have been idle today. I got up and trained. Why? Because the apocalypse is coming. And now I'm doing this because I'm trying to warn people about the impending apocalypse if we don't start living according to natural law and start saying no. So those are all vices, but they're not against natural law. No victim is created out of any of those things. Let's take prostitution, okay? Since I had a problem with porn, all right? Let's take prostitution. Well, I think it's closed down now, but I know places like in Vegas had legal prostitution, the Bunny Ranch and all that. It was completely legal. I think New Jersey might have had one. From what I'm hearing, this summit that's going on, that they're having with the World Economic Forum and all those evil pricks, they've already had a bunch of stuff leaked about paid prostitution. Okay, I think they're pieces of shit for other reasons, not because of that. Anything that 2 adults consent to, they're consenting to. Full stop. I don't care. But it's a vice. Too much of it's not good for you. Coffee can be considered a vice. If you have too much caffeine, that's not good for you. Here's the 7 deadly sins: lust, gluttony, pride, sloth, wrath, greed, envy. I've gone over these before. And if you take, lust, it says be pure, guard your heart, give yourself a project exercise when you're bored, okay? Gluttony, to eat in moderation. All these things are warnings against excess. And I got this little thing behind me here about balance being the key. Balance is the key. At worst, the 7 deadly sins were warnings against excess. And what I think they really were, as I've explained before, were rulers and governing body, government and rulers trying to just control their citizens, control humanity. These are methods of control. Okay, we're in a population call agenda. So the last thing they would want is lust. Okay, gluttony, they want to control the food. Don't take pride in anything, because pride might lead to confidence. Confidence leads to competence. Sloth, they don't want you to rest. Slaves aren't allowed to rest. Keep working, keep making the money. Wrath, they don't want you to get angry, man. I've gone through all this before. Don't be greedy for what we got. You be happy with what you got. Don't be envious either. I can say these all in a way where they sound really good to have, actually. So just understand the difference between what an actual law is and what these things are. These are vices: gluttony, drunkenness, gambling, drugs, greed, prostitution. I can name off a million of them. If they're not creating a victim, they're not against natural law. Now, that's not to say there aren't finer nuances in your life. I think source consciousness wants us to expand with love and consciousness, wants us to be in a higher state of consciousness and not constantly in our complex of our brain, the reptilian brain. The reptilian brain runs the autonomic nervous system, which is, the fight, flight, fornicate, food, your breathing, your heart, your pulse, all that stuff. We're meant to be in higher consciousness. That's how we're going to attain higher consciousness, by not constantly being in that reptile brain. So moving on, I'm going to be talking about anarchism. And a lot of people call this voluntarism. And it's worth going over. I mean, it's worth going over and over and over and over again. And a story that comes to mind is somebody who was a would-be mentor. Would-be, I'm not going to say no names, but a would-be, yoga mentor who knows more about yoga than I do, at least on the physical sense. Wants to be like a life coach and has a lot of experience, but I was apparently triggering this person with my posts because this person's a voter, and I'm not. And they took this as I was, directly assaulting their beliefs of their politics, which just turned into a religion. And then I finally posted something that was a really heartfelt heart share. And I got an inbox that said, hey, okay, that's good. Now just leave it alone for a while and let people make their own decision. I sat on that for a little bit. And then it occurred to me that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, for more than the last 3 years, but the last 3 years specifically, we have been bombarded nonstop and still are being bombarded by mainstream news media of every kind. And they're all working together, folks. MSNBC, CNN, and Fox News. Trust me, little hearts and bubbly things go off. They're all together, man. And it occurred to me, no, I got to keep saying everything. I got to keep saying it over and over again. I got to keep posting stuff. Now, I admit that I post things on Facebook. I get a little raw on Facebook. It's kind of cathartic for me, but I've said this before in one of my little coffee tack chats. I'm not all evilly, angrily typing behind my board and everything. Man, that's the time I have a smile on my face. I do get angry, though. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not... There's nothing wrong with anger. Okay? I'm not going to just say something once and never say it again. That's certainly not what the mainstream news media is. And then I was unfriended. Well, I believe in voluntarism. So free association. Everybody could unfriend me, I have a feeling with some of the things I'll do, I'm going to probably, people like me are going to piss off a lot of people because I'm not going to take a side in politics. I'm not going to take a side in religion. I know there's a God. That's all I need to know. I'll explain more as I go on, but I don't need to follow something made by man. And if that alienates me, then that's fine. I'll stand by myself in the truth. But I'm not by myself. There's a lot of other people that are doing it. But it's worth saying, an anarchist is an individual who, whether he has been brought to by process of reasoning or by sentiment, lives to the greatest possible extent in a state of legitimate defense against authoritarian encroachments. So as a ex-order follower, both military and police and corrections, Jesus Christ, I was constantly at war with my command staff because following orders is not a natural state. Nobody wants to do it. The 5-year-old in all of us is screaming, "You're not the boss of me." I actually had to tell people that. You're not the boss of me, even though they actually were. Not with what they were telling me they weren't. So I came to it through both reasoning and sentiment, to be honest with you. And with that said, we've got to continue what they think anarchy is. I'm going to go with what anarchy isn't. It isn't a radical political movement. It's not a political philosophy. I'm not even going to read the rest of this. It's not a political force. Some people might try to make it into one, but it's not. Anarchism isn't any of that stuff. Okay. Anarchy comes from the Greek prefix "an," meaning without, and the Greek noun archon, meaning rulers. Literally, anarchy means no rulers. Okay, not no rules. So who really rules you? Nobody. You rule yourself. You were born free. Everyone thinks that anarchy is this chaotic thing. Chaos. No, archon is ruler. What's a monarchy? One ruler. Anarchy just means without a ruler. That doesn't mean without rules. You follow natural law. Okay? Would an anarchist society be safe? No. Is one ruled by psychopaths safe? It's not. But and again, I don't want to diss everybody in government. We're all human beings. We're all doing the best, jobs that we can. And I served in the government long enough. I get it. Man, I know some of you are doing, are trying to work as best you can for the people within a system that is just stacked against you, man. I feel for you. Trust me. Believe me. But anarchy simply means without a ruler. It doesn't mean nothing else. Anarchy is freedom. The epiphany of natural authority, the natural moral condition. You are born an anarchist, believe it or not. You are then indoctrinated into statism and subsequent slavery. And that'll be my next section that I'll be talking about. This is my symbol that I had on my website. As you can see, it's like just a little symbol. It's a pentagram. It's a 5-star pentagram. That's what a pentagram is. I had a little symbol of it over my heart where I used to carry, a badge for the state. I wanted to put, an anarchism or abolitionist. It doesn't matter. I wanted to have something different over my heart. I had to take this down from my website because I was checking out my stats, and I literally had a 50% bounce rate. Like the second somebody would check the page, see this, boom, they're gone. 50% bounce rate. So I had to get rid of the anarchism symbol on my website. And to me, that's just a testament of how the word anarchy or anarchism has been socially engineered by the CIA, by these dark sorcerers who want us to think that this word is something it isn't. And originally, a pentagram goes back into many religions. It stood for the elements of earth, fire, air, water. The very point going towards the heavens is spirit. Many, many different belief systems throughout human history have had a pentagram of one form or another that was all about higher spiritual mentality, nothing evil. Okay, these are literally earth elementals right here. They're found in earth, and then the last thing is spirit, because we are spiritual beings, and that's what that points to. Jesus was an anarchist. A lot of people have said this before. I read the 3 books of the Essenes. Jesus spent 10 years with the Jewish Essenes, who were a nomadic, gypsy-like group of anarchist Jews. Okay, they were Jewish anarchists, gypsy anarchists, but they were healers. They had advanced healing modalities for their time. He spent 10 years with them. He was an anarchist. He was teaching natural law. He was against and calling bullshit against the Pharisees, against the religious class of that time. And, his followers turned his teachings into a religion after he was crucified, after they attempted to murder him. The crowd was mind-controlled into calling for his crucifixion. Meanwhile, they cried to have a murderer freed. Barbarus is his name, I believe. They cried to free Barbarus and crucify Jesus. And then instead of following his teachings, he didn't like religion. They turned his teachings into a religion. I believe in a lot of Jesus. I believe in a whole lot of Jesus' teachings. Make no mistake about it. Jesus was an abolitionist. Jesus was an anarchist. He was probably the most famous, real, I would say, social warrior of our modern age in the last 2023 years. a very important man in history. And you think about the dates, everything is either AD or BCE because of the allegorical Jesus or the historical Jesus. And he was an anarchist. I mean, plain and simple. If you don't believe me, do more research. Read the Bible. Read Scripture. A lot of the New Testament, he's teaching natural law. The Ten Commandments, which is Old Testament, still natural law. So by proxy, what I want to show you here is some pictures of some anarchists, okay? And as you can see, this is definitely some chaotic, out of control event. I mean, look at all these people just sitting there calmly. It's terrible. Violence is probably going to break out any second now. I was there at that whole event. It didn't. It was kind of weird for anarchists. But, here's another, two other anarchists. This is me and another anarchist that I met down there. Luckily, they took this picture right before she hit me, and I tried to bite her. It was bad. They broke us up. But, anarchy broke out, right? And look at this chaotic scene. Literally, this is what anarchy is. How's that look to you? Does any of this stuff look chaotic? It looks pretty civil and orderly to me, actually. Look at them just diabolically planning morning breakfast. These are anarchists. And there's a lot more people there that morning than this. As about 6 or 7 people or so left, I was like, hey, let me get a picture before they all leave. I didn't even think to take a picture. This was like right outside my tent, my little portable campfire thing. It was a pretty cool morning. By sharp contrast, that was me the first night planning my chaos for the event, and I had my chaos all planned out. That's what anarchy is, okay? And literally the proof's in the pictures. And by proxy, let me show you what civil voting citizens look like under rulership of other human beings. I can't say this enough, man. When you're out free in nature, and nobody's telling you what to do or threatening you or trying to use force on you or be violent, I should say, against you, and you're in nature and you're free, you feel good. When you're being told what to do by rulers, you don't feel good. Now, if you zoom in on this picture, that's not a police car. That's somebody's private car. Now, we've got a right to protest. I believe we got a right to use force to defend ourselves. But destroying another person's property, that's a direct transgression against natural law. What's coming back to them for this? Okay, the two-party system has each other victimizing each other over and over again. What do you think natural law is constantly doing? These evil, dusty fucks know this. They know how to keep us, working against each other. Okay, and this was in Seattle. So he's wearing a mask. More than likely, these are people from the Cult of the Donkey protesting in Seattle. And it happened all over the country. Here's one in Cleveland. That's a police car burning. But every time one of these mostly peaceful protests broke out, it was because people were upset, and there's always these agent provocateurs that get the crowd going, and then once that violence mentality kicks off in the crowd, and you get that hive mind thing, everyone just gets violent. These two ladies were down there. Obviously, they looked scared. They were probably down there to actually peacefully protest. A lot of violent stuff happened. Okay, this was in Cleveland, relatively low key compared to a lot of other states. during the riots a few years ago. But just note the difference. I'm not judging anybody who did what they have a right to do. You have a right to protest. I'm not judging. You know what? Insurance will cover it, but don't victimize other people's property or be violent to other people. Okay, those are transgressions against natural law. Now, if you're using force to defend yourself against an unruly, unjust state, or someone decides they want to target you, then defend yourself. But this is mindless right here. With that said, you got a right to be there. But just look at the difference between people that are in nature not being ruled, at least momentarily, by a bunch of, sociopathic, narcissistic, scum. I don't know what else to call them. At least at the highest levels of it. I'm not saying you're all bad. I know some of you are really doing the best you can, man. I mean, we're all human. I'm not trying to be a judge. I'm letting a little bit of my anger out, I guess. But look at the difference. Seriously. From people who weren't being ruled to people who are currently being ruled, or at least feel like they are. And they're fighting because they want their version of rulership to give authority to others to victimize others on their behalf. At least back in the Viking days, if violence was done, they went out and did it themselves. They didn't authorize others to go do it for them. So again, freedom is natural. It's your birthright. I mean, it's that simple. It's your birthright. Unnatural is having your rights written down on a piece of paper. Some human being scribbled down some rights and set them before other human beings and said, here are your rights. Okay? Tell me how things changed. We had the right idea. We had the right idea. But we went from a monarchy that had lords and barons and stuff like that because they wanted to still be able to point the pictures at one another, right? Point their fingers at one another. They wanted plausible deniability too. So the king, he had lords and barons and stuff to be basically governors in Congress, right, and mayors. So we come over here and we have a president and a Congress that stays in Congress for life. Not much changes. It's all government. Nothing changes. Okay, I've gotten into this before. Monotheism and polytheism in religions. They're all polytheistic. All of them. Anyway, you're born free. That's your natural birthright. Having your rights scribbled down on a piece of paper is unnatural. Okay, nature equals anarchy. You already are a real anarchist. Believe it or not. Some of you don't want to be anarchists, though. Trying to change that. Trying to get people not to vote. Trying to get people to see the contradictions in government. To see the lies. How come every 4 years, let's just say we have the highest office in the land is being held by somebody from the cult of the donkey. Well, 2 years later, like we just seen at midterm elections, the cult of the elephant over in the House, and vice versa. It's kind of amazing, isn't it? It keeps that Hegelian dialectic going and keeps the people fighting over shit. So political action, voting is useless. It's just simply useless. And the symbology of this is not lost on me. The elephant and the donkey both have red and blue in them. They literally are the Demopublicans and the Republicrats. So this is the look that I get from people when I tell them not to vote. This is literally the look. And then when they tell, this is, by proxy, when they tell me that I should vote, this is the look they probably get from me. That's a lot of math for a former Marine. But anyway, So what are the characteristics here of psychopaths? It's worth looking at. So we've got politicians on one side. On the other side, we have the Pope, the papacy, and the Queen of England, former Queen of England before she passed. So let me... Yeah, the ugly about politics. So there's a Republican, a Democrat, a Republican, a Democrat. They're all friends. They all belong to the same club. I voted one time in my life. I was influenced by my wife. I voted Democrat. I voted for what was his? God, I can't even think of his name. That's terrible. Anyways, I'll come back to it. But he didn't win. But again, marketing got to me because I seen a picture of him with a rifle by the woods. I thought he'd be better to vote for than the guy who went into the Air Force National Guard. But characteristics of psychopaths: they're aggressive, they're callousness, complete absence of conscience, complete absence of empathy. They're cunning. They're adept at manipulating others, you think? Willingness to engage in strongly immoral and criminal conduct. Willingness to take what they want and do as they please, regardless of who is hurt or wronged, just as long as they don't get caught. A lot of people commit suicide over that. Deceptive ability to appear outwardly benevolent. And isn't that part of what it is? Euphemize the violence, euphemize the slavery, and fool people and keep people distracted with a bunch of bullshit. Deceptive ability to behave in superficially charming ways to hide purely selfish motives. Willingness to use intimidation and violence to control others in order to satisfy their own needs. And of course, they don't do that themselves. God forbid they don't do that themselves. They got order followers to do that for them. But these are all puppets and pawns. These are puppets and pawns. They're just the highest level puppets. But I mean, just look at that picture. I mean, this is like from 2009, but still, they're all friends. Yeah, it was John Kerry, 2004. I voted for him. I know. I shouldn't have, but whatever. I shouldn't have voted, period. I voted for him because there was a picture of him with an M16A1 rifle with some, forced, there's some jungle in the background, but he was never actually in anything. And then when asked about the skull and bones, John Kerry and George Bush Jr. both gave the same answer. We don't talk about skull and bones. They were part of the same club, man. Same secret society. Again, the donkey and the elephant, blue and red. They're might as well be zebras. They might as well be zebras. Republicans and Republicrats have been calling them that for years, man. This is a good representation to me of the mentality that Americans take with our politicians. Actually, probably over there in Britain, England, whatever, in Europe, they kind of do the same thing. Any place there's this voting that we can do, they create sides. Doesn't this remind you of like a sports team? Because it's that sports team mentality. And once you get behind your sports team, you gotta, your team's got to win no matter what they're doing. Right? No matter what they're doing, your team's got to win. That's the mentality. It's a religious mentality. Religious comes from a Latin word, religare, meaning to tie, to bind, or to retie, to rebind, to hold back, to thwart from forward progress. It's a religion. It's a religion and it's a sport. People treat it as a sport, and it's like it's a sport. It's like the Browns versus the Steelers. It's like a football game. Except what's at stake is everyone's freedom, and they're working together to take all our freedoms away from us. Literally, this is what they do. They're like the guy from The Simpsons. They're just plotting and planning on how they can get into office, keep their power, stay in power, and how they can keep us fighting one another. With Hegelian dialectics, they create the problem, offer the solution, and get us to fight one another over bullshit. Okay, I can start naming it off. I just don't want to get into all of it. You know, what they use. They use race. They use politics. You know, pro-life and pro-choice. You can't be one without also simultaneously being the other. It's impossible. Research it and think about it. Okay, they get you fighting over the stupidest shit. We're going to take your guns. You don't have a right to take our guns. And they haven't taken them here in this country, which is why we're not locked down. You know, the greatest weapon is not a gun or a bomb. It's the control of information. To control the world's information is to manipulate all the minds that consume it. Like I was saying earlier, the mainstream news media, they're all bought and paid for by corporate America and by the military-industrial complex to put out exactly what they're told to put out, to mind control people, to actually trigger people. Okay, these dark psychologists know how to trigger the mentality of the left and the mentality of the right, and they trigger you to work against each other. And I'm talking far left and far right. A lot of times I'm seeing the people who are more moderate, who might vote either way, or the people who just don't vote and don't give a damn, which is actually 2/3 of the country, just wants to be free and left alone. Only 1/3 of the country supposedly picks our leaders. Just moving on. Okay, we're all being played. Again, there's a red hand, there's a blue hand. There's your teams, guys. And skin color, religion, class, the working poor versus the non-working poor. Let's get them fighting one another. Nationality. Well, how about we're all human first? We're all human. Okay, language, social customs, sexual identity. So they attack these things, and they make them seem like they're being attacked by the other side. Profession, political identity. The political identity is, you're just voting, you're rooting for your team, Yeah, we're being played. And this is definitely to my right-wing friends. I know I've made some podcasts where I would direct certain things at like at my left-wing friends. Well, I don't want to do that without also directing some things at my right-wing friends. So there's a Senate bill that got passed last year. In 2021, it actually got passed, the Surface Transportation Resolution Act of 2021. They wanted to amend Title 23 of this. Now, I read this, and I got to tell you, the word safety in it appeared so many fucking times. I wanted to purposely go do something crazy and unsafe. That's how aggravated I was at all the safety that was in this bill and the other stuff that I had to look up because of this. It's a very tedious read, and they make it like that on purpose, but I found what I was looking for. And what I have highlighted there is 1304, Section 1304. I had to look this up somewhere else. You can literally Google it, man. This isn't deep research. Intelligent transportation systems. So what this is they're going to make smart cars and vehicles. They're already talking every tower they go by because you got GPSs in them, but they want to make them even more so. They can send a computer signal to your car from the dealership if they have a warrant. They can shut your car down anywhere if it's a newer vehicle, right? Well, they want to make it to where it could be done automatically from a tower. So these towers are going to have the technology to automatically have the VIN number of your vehicle, facial recognition technology, plate recognition technology, free highway or smart highways. So they want to literally control everywhere you travel. This is part of the technocratic surveillance state, man. Something to pay attention to. Last couple of years, there's this Chinese company called LKCO, and they were up to like over $2 a stock, and then they started to get shook out a little bit. Company's worth billions of dollars. It's the third largest It's the third largest company of its kind that makes that type of technology, spy technology. Worth billions. They did a big shakeout on it. Somebody here in this country bought like $1 billion worth of it when it was like about 60 or 70 cents. It got up to like a little over $2, and then they started the big shakeout in it. Now, I'm not big into stocks, but I watched this. See, what this did is this went across the bottom of CNN. Okay? This was, and the reason I'm telling the right this, the reason I'm telling my Republican friends this was passed by your team and the other team, bipartisan cooperation, 100%, no fights at all, and that's why it was just quietly quick. They told you about it really quick, and that's it. You never heard another thing from it. It's just like the Patriot Act. So your side is doing just as much to ruin our freedoms. We never got our Fourth Amendment rights back after the Patriot Act, but hey, man, it was called the Patriot Act. So remember that slide about whoever controls the words and what is said controls information? Well, it's called the Patriot Act. Hell, give me a coffee, let me stick a boot in someone's ass and a beer, and let's go be patriots. And here it's to take away all our privacy. We've lost every bit of privacy, and they've never given it back. Rights taken away are never given back, man. Don't want to sound like I'm preaching. It's the truth. So I just wanted to let you guys know that this bill was passed. The right helped just as much as the left. They're not on your side, man. They're on their side. Okay, I'm not saying at the lower levels some of them don't legitimately fight one another. At the highest levels, they're working together. Okay, it's a WWE show. Show. So this is the part that was highlighted. The smart freeways, and I just Googled that and got the information on how all these towers will be talking to vehicles, and it's just going to be happening. So if they don't want you traveling, they can shut your car off automatically. That's part of what it's going to be. That's the technocratic, surveillance state, along with transhumanism. They're wanting to put chips in our bodies and all this other stuff. I mean, there's going to be a time we're going to have to come together and say no. That's going to be the end of it. We have a right to use force to defend ourselves. Don't vote. It only encourages them. And part of this thing is this. You can make a statement by not voting, and you also, if there's no one voting for them, if we wake up enough people not to vote, well, then their aggression, okay, and their state-sponsored violence isn't with the consent of the people, because the people didn't vote for anybody. So when they start acting stupid, it's not on behalf of anybody. When it's not on behalf of everybody, all of us will know that. How do you think that's going to go? They need your vote. Both sides really do. Don't vote. Literally, this is what politicians do. Give the keys of the city over to the faceless one who's running all this shit. I had no clue whatsoever that Hasbro had so much correct. I don't believe this is being ran by a human being. I believe it's really being ran by some extraterrestrial with some agenda. I'll just leave it at that. So if you're part of the cult of the donkey or the elephant, you got choices. And I put this in one of my other podcasts. I think this was one of Larkin Rose's memes. I dug it. Look where slavery. Look where on the scale of slavery both political parties are at. Okay, sure. The guy with the elephant is just a little shoulder arm's length closer to freedom. But look in reality where they're both at. That's the reality of our system. I realized this a long time ago before I actually got involved in anything. That's why I hardly ever voted. Nothing ever changed, really. Again, freedom, it's natural. It's our freedom is our birthright. That piece of paper on the right, I'll wipe my ass with it. Seriously. How are you going to say I, a human being, will write down and scribble down, these These are your rights. I wrote them down. Here they are. There's your rights. Your rights were already given to you by God. And this is a sign from Corey's website, Nita.one, never vote. Put the sign up next to political signs. If you want to send a message to people not to vote, you could print these off on a color printer. Go pin them up next to signs. I plan on getting out there and doing that. I plan on getting out there and doing that around here or wherever I'm at. All this is on his website. These slides I got were on his website. And this is stuff you could print out and just, for the cost of the paper to print it out, go put it up someplace. I know I'm going to. So now we're going to get into how slavery still exists because of order followers. Government is slavery, the epiphany of man-made authority. The unnatural, immoral condition. Government's mind control. Literally, it means mind control. Governare is the Latin verb for mind control. And that's the etymological origins of that word. Government is slavery. All governments around the world, everywhere, even in the best ones. So, how do they enslave us? I always like to use the allegory of a vampire, okay? Because with the allegory of a vampire, the vampire is following natural law to a certain degree. The vampire requires your consent to cross the threshold into your abode, into your house, into your dwelling. You need your permission. If it comes in without your permission, it doesn't have the same power. It becomes much weaker. With your consent, however, you're giving it permission. It'll come in and it'll feed on you. It may not kill you, okay? It'll leave. But you've given it consent once. That's all it needs. It'll come back. Now it's implied consent. It's like the rights the governments take away. You never get those rights back. Nothing's been reversed after the Patriot Act. So they need the consent of the governed to suck on us like parasites, like vampires. Vampire needs your consent, allegorically, to come into your house. And when it has your consent, it's not being affected by natural law or karmic law to the degree that it would be if it did so without your consent. Okay, that's one way that slavery still exists. Speaking of vampiric parasites, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Klaus Schwab, eat your bugs by Agenda 2030. That time's going to go by quick between now and then. I know the last 30 years will come by quick, so I know the next 7 will go by quick. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. So I guess we'll own nothing. They won't have to ask for our consent to enter then. Now, if you're a voter in this country, or anywhere in the world actually, left or right, whatever side of government you're on, it doesn't matter. You cannot look at this dude and listen to what he fucking says and have any doubt or inkling in your mind that he is a good moral person. Okay? I don't care how you're being mind controlled. There's some part of you that knows this is an evil person, man. And if you don't, you're just as psychopathic as they are. There's no way, and I'm not talking about the top 1% of the rich people. I'm talking about your average person out there who's a voter. I don't care if you vote left or right, doesn't matter. You gotta know this dude is an evil piece of vampire shit. He probably doesn't even go out in the sun. And the thing is about this is he's a high-level dude in the world, okay? I believe him, Bill Gates, and a whole bunch of other people are pawns. They're just that top level. I think there's a level between them and who's really pulling pulling the strings for this stuff. This is not a human-driven thing, folks. Humans are lazy. We like consistency. We like routine. That's psychology. Sometimes we like a little excitement. This is agenda-driven stuff that only sociopaths and something that's non-human driven to do all this. Something has scared world leaders into this shit. Something made people that were highly respected by their troops just completely turn on humanity and back down and just resign. They were ready on something. I'm not going to even say any names. But what happens when nature is confused and unknown? Slavery was seen as natural. So think about in this country when the African slave trade came here and we traded slaves. Police were originally formed as a patrol, a slave patrol. Okay? So slavery was seen as natural. Why was it seen as natural? Because it was legal. So therefore they say it was moral. But we know that under God's natural law, in nature, slavery is not natural. It's not moral. Slavery is always them taking something, ownership of your property, ownership of you, without your consent. That is slavery. Slavery was seen as natural because it was legal. So just because we don't have legal ball and chain slavery anymore, legally, doesn't mean it doesn't still exist in that form. All the human trafficking that goes on in the world for sex slaves is also for labor slaves. That's slavery. That's somebody taking ownership of your body. That's what half this human trafficking is. So ball and chain slavery still exists. It's just more covert now. Overt ball and chain chattel slavery, oh God, it's illegal. See, we know that's immoral. They're still doing it. So this is this slide right here. So it's status then and now. 1861, it's my right to force other people to work my fields. And this is an old one from 2012. Well, it's my right to force other people to pay for what I want. Well, this is pretty noteworthy on the right. The abolitionists of the past were under no obligation to explain how society would work without slavery. And the abolitionists, I'd say the anarchists of the present, are under no such obligation either, both of which understand that slavery is wrong and has to end. See, what they do now is they just, not only do they obfuscate what morals are to get order followers to do their dirty so they don't have to bear the brunt of the negative consequential effects of natural law, they also want to obfuscate what is slavery. And what kind of stuff are we putting out into the world to on a worldwide level for this to be happening? Okay, unnatural doing. All wrongdoings are forms of slavery. Slavery is not natural. It is not a necessary evil. So when you vote, it isn't picking the lesser of two evils. Nobody is by nature a slave. We're all born free. We're all sovereign at birth. We don't need no paperwork telling us we are. But when you think about it, they give us a social security number that tracks us the rest of our life. Nature wants to save us. So the last part of the little presentation that I'm going to do here and talk about, I can actually see myself doing these live one of these days, and then actually taking calls and seeing what people have to say. I think that's going to be the next step as I progress. Next stop's going to be on the painful truth. The first part of how we're able to have keep slavery going is they get our consent through tricking us. They trick us. I'm keeping myself in this. I've been tricked before. We had in the prison, when I worked in the prison, we had a saying, trick or treat. And a lot of times you get the trick, not the treat. So I've been tricked. I've been tricked into doing the immoral jobs I've done. I've been tricked into voting before. I've been tricked into believing in what real service to humanity is and isn't. And this is the painful truth. And this isn't against guys. I got cops out there that are friends. They're good people. They're doing the best job they can within a moral system that they know is fucked up. Counting the days till they can retire. I know you guys ain't bad dudes, so I'm speaking directly to you, man. I was one of you for too many years. Here's what I'll tell you. I had a lot of different things, again, I can call them divine, that woke me up. That brought me into happenstances and circumstances that awakened me. Okay, through great pain. To understand that the contradictions within the system, anywhere there's contradictions, there's lies. Coming up in the future, in the next 7 to 10 years, and probably less than that, next couple years, you guys who are still out there jobbing it, I'm talking to the good ones, and anyone I was associated with was a good one, even though we all serving in a moral system, okay? Your choices, you're not going to have this huge spectrum of choices. You're going to have a very small spectrum of choices that are bad and worse. That's what it's coming down to for you guys. Your choices are going to be bad and worse. And there's one other choice you can have that's over here by itself. That's don't do it. Don't follow immoral orders or quit your job. Come over to the other side. Because what I'm about to say is a painful truth. This is objective facts throughout all of human history. Okay? The order follower always bears more moral culpability than the order giver. Okay? Just following orders doesn't cut it. Because the order follower is the one who actually performed the action. And taking such action actually brought the resultant harm into physical manifestation. Order following is the pathway to every form of evil and chaos in our world. It should never be seen as a virtue by anyone who considers themselves a moral human being. Order followers have ultimately been personally responsible and morally culpable for every form of slavery and every single totalitarian regime, and I'll add atrocity and democide, that has ever existed upon the face of earth. You have to learn how to think for yourself. Let that inner 5-year-old come out of you and say, hey, you're not the boss of me. I'm not doing that. You know right from wrong. You know what's objectively moral and what's not objectively moral. Go back over everything I just said and go look at other people's work. Search within yourself to do your own shadow work on why you're doing the job. Your general orders always give you this one little out that you're supposed to disobey immoral orders, but then they work really good in this little gray area at obfuscating the orders. And they think what you're doing is virtuous. Okay? Giving out a speeding ticket for someone going 11 miles over the speed limit is not virtuous, especially when I'm going to drive 25 miles over the speed limit on my way home, which is why I didn't write a lot of tickets. And that's like the lightest form of what's happens in history with order followers, both military and police. The military, what the military's capabilities are just scary. Now, back in the early 2000s, it was starting to get big. I actually started noticing it as a training officer and as somebody who didn't dig it. I started noticing the over-militarization of police. I didn't like it. I wrote articles about it. I'll have to find some of them. I have this thing, if you give tools to tools, they're going to find an excuse to use them. I didn't like the over-militarization of police. I understood needing some things in this country, but I didn't understand some of the stuff, like all the military surplus they were getting. I don't think they needed all that. But getting away from the police and getting to the military, when two old dusty fucks have temper tantrums and can't get along, they send young men from their countries to go murder each other. That's not moral. And I was in the Marine Infantry Weapons Company, and I thank God every day that I wasn't deployed. I would have killed for my brothers beside me. Because once the bullets start flying, you're just in a fight. I get it. During World War I, and I think everyone may have heard the story, during World War I don't want to act like a tough guy. I trained today, right? 10s unit on my back. Got to turn it on. My back's hurt. I'm still in my prime though, so. But anyway, during World War I, American troops and German troops across the field from one another, the battlefield. It was Christmas Eve. They called a ceasefire because both sides celebrated Christmas. And that night, as both sides ate and honored the ceasefire, the troops were singing Christmas carols to one another. These young 18, 19, 20-year-old boys, young men, singing Christmas carols to one another, and then the next morning resumed murdering one another for their lords, for their old dusty fucks who couldn't get along. Okay? Something that occurred to me, and I have a book on symbols. I wanted to bring it up. You can buy a book on symbols, and it gives you all the symbols and what their meanings are. And it's a good book. Maybe I'll put it in my next podcast, or maybe I'll just put it down in the description down below. It's about symbols, and something that I noticed was the highest military honor, the Congressional Medal of Honor. They look slightly different. The one for the Navy would be also the ones that the Marines would wear. But if you noticed, I gave a little bit of a background on what a pentagram was and the spirituality behind it. And if you look, the highest military award for bravery is an inverted pentagram. They're literally throwing satanic symbols in your face as an order follower. Okay? Military personnel wear dog tags. Okay? I know everyone's heard this saying, unleash the dogs of war. Okay? Dogs want to please their masters. They're flaunting their symbolism right in front of you. Again, not to take away the bravery. I think the last moral war, I personally think was World War II, but it's not to take away the bravery of anybody in any war that have done great deeds to protect their brothers and sisters because they were willing to lay down their life to save someone else. But why were you there? These are the deeper, harder questions that need to be asked. And I'm not a combat vet. I can't answer these questions. I've had bullets fly by me. I know what it sounds like. I have been shot in the civilian world as a cop, stabbed in the middle of a prison riot. So I've been in some chaotic events, but I was never deployed. So I'm not judging, but just look at if you're out and you can think about it, look at the satanic symbolism of this. Okay, I know this isn't American soldiers, but man, they got a certain uniform and they got guns, and those are women and children. Those are Jewish women and children. This is femicide. This was an ethnic cleansing. How badly were morals obfuscated for these motherfuckers to think it was okay to do this? They're just following orders. Democide, which is murder by government, is the greatest, largest cause of unnatural deaths in human history. This is the karma that our world has been putting out for centuries in a repeated loop, in a repeated pattern. We have to start asking the bigger questions. Why? We're the last free country on this planet. They can't do what they want to do if we stand together. They know this. And then on the flip side of things, you've got the militarization of the police. I was on a couple of special response teams. That's what these guys more than likely are. These would be rank and file officers. I'm sorry. who follow orders. And we seen back during the riots, if they were given the orders, I know some of that was probably WWE, crisis acting. I could spot that when I see it. I could spot street theater, but some of it wasn't. And a lot of them did use excessive force when given the go-ahead. By the same token, they followed what I would consider immoral orders not to act and actually fulfill their oaths when given those orders. So again, we have to start thinking for ourselves when it comes to this kind of stuff. These aren't easy choices. I don't say this flippantly. I did the job for a lot of years, and I was never put in some of these bad positions that a lot of guys today and in the next few years are going to be put in. Your choices are going to be slim. The spectrum of choices you have to make are going to be bad to worse, unless you just completely disobey and come over to the other side. Okay, with your fellow citizens, with your fellow human beings, become part of humanity. We'll take you in with open arms, man. And, they did me. Everyone will. Everyone will. We've all been raised, even as a cop. When I was actively a cop, and I'd be driving, and a cop would, I was off duty, and a cop would pull up behind me. I was like, shit, I would be scared too. We're all like that, okay? We're raised to respect, authority. And when you decide not to do something immoral and cross sides, you will get real thanks for your service at that time. When you start seeing our First Amendment rights being slaughtered on social medias, I see this, America's a free nation, change my mind. This was a meme on Facebook. I could literally see that happening at a lemonade stand. We've seen videos of it. This next slide is very telling to me. It's the Medal of Valor, which is the highest medal that a first responding peacekeeper law officer can receive. It's the equivalent of the Medal of Honor. And again, if you take a look at it, that's an inverted pentagram. Again, they're throwing satanic symbolism right in our faces. It's very plain to see. It's just as easy to buy a scientist as it is to buy a politician. Yes, it is. Science for money. We have medical mercenaries. Folks, I worked for a federal medical facility as an order follower. I watched doctors do exactly what they were told to fucking do. And I'm talking psychologists, psychiatrists, and medical doctors. One of these physician's assistants wasn't even licensed at one point in time. I won't even get into any of that. What I'm getting at is this. I've seen it up close and personal. I'm not telling anything new to people who already know this. But just understand, you're not fooling people like me. I have a great level of respect for doctors that will speak out against tyranny and tell the truth. Dr. Robert Malone, Democrat, worked for and voted for Obama. Once this stuff started happening, the doctor in him just was honest. He spoke out. And look what they did to him. Look what they did to every doctor who spoke out against this. And all you other fucking doctors, shame on you. Shame on you. Medical mercenaries. The white coats are coming. That's who we really have to worry about. It isn't going to be law enforcers. They're going to have a combination of law enforcement's white coats is what they're going to have. It's going to be a combo. Free face mask with every enlistment of Cobra. What did Hasbro know back then? I still say it, I've got other theories. One of these days I'm going to talk about theories why certain entertainers are no longer with us because they wouldn't bend to the will of these satanic fucks to influence people with their music. And that's a whole other episode in itself. Anyway, I want to give out some information real quick. This is my website. It's new and improving. That's the picture on it now instead of the anarchy symbol. And I didn't purposely do that in my eye, whatever that is. It's just I took a selfie. I had a bonfire going in the background, and you could see my torches lit. And this is from 2019. My camera is looking funny, and it just made some type of funny eye thing. And I was like, hey, that's kind of a cool picture. So I threw that up there. But the website is spiritualanarchist93.com. If you go to, if you go to free media, there's a lot of books on there, a lot of free content. I've got links to other people's content where you could just get a lot of information, lots of information. And you kind of make up your own mind after you research a little bit. I'm not asking you to. If you're kind of middle of the road, what I would say to you is this: if you're more of a middle of the road kind of moderate left voter, moderate right voter, consider what I'm saying and understand. If you know some of this is a conspiracy, please understand it's all a conspiracy. It isn't just bits and pieces you can pick out and say, hey, this is what it's all a conspiracy, man. And I had to tell that to one of my friends, and it convinced him. And he was kind of a Trumper. And I was like, dude, it's either all a conspiracy or none of it is. You start to think about it. This was in conjunction with a very long conversation, but I would ask you to think about that. There's a lot of street theater going on, okay? Lots of it. And if you've worked any kind of undercover, plain clothes, have had any type of training on anything in the military, other than just shooting a gun, you should be able to see it. And people a lot smarter than me can see it. But anyways, check that out. I also put up a link to Corey's website, natureistheanswer.1/truth. He's got free books. That's his book, Slavery, Gone for Good. He's offering solutions. The book on the right, I also have both those other books on my website, but go to his website. He's got lots of stuff. It's a lot bigger than mine. He's got a lot of links also. Since so many of these slides were his, I wanted to throw that up real quick. And then I wanted to talk about something and just leave everybody with this thought. In the last few years, they did things to seek to separate us, to keep us separate, to keep us apart, keep us fighting. They wanted to create separation, loneliness, no communication. They wanted us to wear masks, so they would kind of dehumanize us in a way. It's kind of like cult indoctrination, make everyone look alike. But my big takeaway from it was the separation. Although we are people who I sometimes like to be isolated, I like my autonomy, but we are social beings. I worked in a prison. One of the worst things you can do to a person was put them in the hole, put them in segregation, even if it was for their safety. I knew dudes who, I knew cops who caught cases and were doing time. They're like, fuck that. I don't want to go in protective custody and segregation. Put me on population. They go on population, get in 1 or 2 fights, end up becoming friends with a couple people, but they weren't alone. I've had unhealthy coping mechanisms. I've had, addictions. I've had things that I've had to work through. And I can tell you right now, and this really, it hits home for me, the number one cause of all addictions is loneliness. And they wanted to create a lot of loneliness. So, if you ever find yourself lonely, know you're never alone. You're not. Till next time, stay safe.
Stand and fight. Live by your heart. Always one more try.